Okay, so I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about filing.xbrl.org, as has already been mentioned. This is a relatively new initiative set up by XBRL International to make the ESEF filings that have been made so far more readily available. So it's a freely accessible index. We've got nearly 700 filings. I'll talk a bit more about the features, but I think the best thing to do is just have a quick demonstration. So if you go to filings.xbrl.org, you'll get to this page, which has an index of all of the filings that we've managed to find so far. As you can see, we've got 684 of them, and we can filter this by country code. You'll see that for each filing, we've got the country that the filing was made in, the date for the report. In most cases, we've recorded the language that it was made in, and we've got various links for each filing that I'll go through in just a moment. The index is built around the LEIs for each company, and if you click on the LEI links, it will do a lookup against the LEI database about the company that made the filing, so you can check the information there. So that's all linked in. So as I said, for each filing, we've got a number of links. Possibly the easiest to work with is this view link. I'm just going to switch tabs rather than open one up on the fly. When you click on the iXBRL viewer link, you get the filing displayed in the Workiva open source iXBRL viewer, and you can use this to navigate around the facts in the document. If I just click this, we can highlight all of the elements that have been tagged, and we can click on each element to get information about it, including some very basic analysis like the amount it was changed upon compared to last year. And we get the information from the taxonomy, which I can switch between the different languages available in the taxonomy there. So I won't go into all the features of the Workiva viewer. I'll let other people explore that, and instead look at the other different formats that we've made available. So this filing, I actually forgot which one it was. Let's just grab the LEI again. So this actually allows you to search by LEI, even though that's not shown here. So that's brought up the filing we were just looking at. And I think one of the most interesting things we've got here is the ability to view this in JSON format. So if I click on that link, you can see here that we have the information from the filing pulled out into XBRL JSON format. If you're not familiar with it, XBRL JSON is a new specification under development by XBRL International, which is a standardized format for representing XBRL data in JSON format. It's intended to be very easy for developers to work with and get access to the information. And if you look at what's on the screen, hopefully it's inherently intuitive. For each fact, we have a fact ID. So, for example, we have fact ID 3, and we have a value. It's precision, stated in decimals, and then the dimensions, including the concept, the LEI for the entity, the period, and the units. So this is all intended to be very, very easy to consume. There's no need to go away and deal with context as you would in the XML version. The periods are always stated as full date time elements, so that's much easier to parse than how it works in XML. And yeah, so hopefully that's all very easy to consume. And if you're just trying to get at the data from these XBRL filings, this is probably the easiest way to do it. So yeah, and for each fact here, you can see the fact IDs there. If you want to, you can actually navigate directly to facts in the viewer. So if you want to, you can generate a URL straight into the viewer and put the fact ID in the URL, and it'll jump straight to that fact when the viewer opens. So that can be a good way to link between the data and the presentation of the data. So the other things we have, as has already been mentioned, we provide the zip file as we loaded it into the system originally, completely unmodified, and we also allow you to browse around the directory structure that we have on the web server. So, for example, looking at this filing, there's the zip file, there's the JSON file. This directory here is an unzipped copy of the filing. So you can see in here, we've got the reports in the reports directory, and the taxonomies will be under this directory hierarchy here. So those files are all directly accessible. You can also see we've got this metadata.json file, which is the JSON information that we've extracted from it in order to power our index. So the country that it was filed in, the report, the links to the various files, the LEI, the reporting date, that sort of thing, that's all there. As was mentioned, as is mentioned on the index page here, you can get access to the index, the list of all filings, also in JSON format. So if I click on that list, I get the 684 filings in a single JSON format. So if you want to write something to access all the filings that we've got or search them in your own way, you can simply load in filings.xbrl.org/index.json, and my browser's just reformatting that, process that information directly. And my browser will catch up in a moment, I'm sure. Yeah, there we go. So one of the things that you may have noticed on the index is the icons down the left-hand side, which are just loading, sorry, which indicate where we've got issues with the filing. So the warning triangles indicate that they have XBRL validation errors. The info icon indicates that there are warnings of some kind, most commonly formula validation errors, and I can't see one immediately, but there's also, there we go, there's an icon there that indicates that a filing has calculation inconsistencies in it. Now, you may have noticed that an awful lot of these filings have an icon of one kind or another. I've actually picked a bad example there. The vast majority of the errors that we've seen are not with the report itself, but are actually with the packaging of it into a report package. So, for example, here we've got a lot of them that trigger this kind of error, which is an indication that the zip file that was submitted to the regulator wasn't put together correctly, and that's something that we at XBRL International are working to get resolved as quickly as possible. We're introducing certification that will cover this format, so hopefully we won't see these errors in the future. So just talk a little bit more about the system as a whole. So I think I've covered most of the functionalities that we've got. One thing I would add is that all the filings that we've obtained, we've put into a GitLab repository, and XBRL International members can access that repository and get access to all the raw filings, so they can bulk download all of the zip files via Git if they want to. If you're interested in doing that, please drop me an email and I'll give you the details of how to do that. Obviously, the filings are also available online via our web server. So why are we doing this? Number of reasons. One of which is just to get this data make this data more accessible and more discoverable. As has been mentioned already, simply finding the filings can be a bit of a challenge. Locating the relevant OAM in each country can be tricky, and then navigating their website to actually find ESEF reports can also be tricky. We've done quite a lot of that, although it was hard work, and many of them couldn't be easily automated. But we also wanted to demonstrate what we consider to be a good way to make inline XBRL data available. That is, make it available in the viewer so that people can look at it directly, but also make it available in the more accessible JSON format so that developers can start working with data as quickly as possible. And we also wanted to enable discussion of data quality issues. As I've just seen, quite a lot of the filings do have some issues or other, a lot of them minor, some of them more significant. And we want to enable people to start that discussion and start thinking about how they should improve their review processes in the future. This is fairly common for a new filing system. We often see data quality issues in early filings within a new system, and what we want to do is just shorten the time that it takes us to get to the point where we've got high quality, reliable data in these filings by highlighting the importance of validation and review. So there are some limitations here. One of the biggest one is that the index is incomplete. We've tried to find all the sources of data, and wherever possible, we've tried to automate loading of the filings, but we don't yet have a mechanism for automatically checking for new filings where they're made available. So unfortunately, the index is not being updated automatically. We will add filings as we become aware of them. And some filings can't be loaded at all due to validation errors. If you, in some cases, you'll see an entry that has no viewer and no JSON links. That indicates that there were validation errors that prevented us from processing it. In some cases, the filing will just be missing altogether because we couldn't figure out which company it was and what the filing date was. And if we can't figure out that information, we don't create an entry for them in the index. And one issue you will come up against if you start exploring the data in detail is that quite often you'll see well, not quite often, in a number of cases, you will see the same company, a filing for the same company on the same date in the same language. And at that point, there's no way of knowing what the relationship is between those filings. In some cases, it may be that one of the filings is an amendment for another filing. In other cases, in at least one case, I think it's because they haven't tagged the languages correctly. So although it is a dual language filing, we think they're both in the same language and can't differentiate them. And this, I think, is something that highlights in the future a need for a more standard mechanism within the OAMs for publishing this data, because different OAMs expose information like whether a filing is an amendment for another in different ways. There's no standard way for us to understand that information. So yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to say about that. If anyone's got any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. If not, please do take a look at the site and have a look at the data that's in there.
Questions to Paul? Well, more than a question, I have a petition, a keenly request. I has been reviewing the part of the errors, and obviously some of the errors are recurrent. For instance, you have the error that the archive path contains backslash or something similar. The point is, if it would be possible to prepare a list of a ranking of most common errors, because I think this may be extremely useful for the European preparers, because, for instance, this topic of the backslash, I think maybe potentially easy to correct. So having a list of errors, or maybe that include the solutions in the blog of XBRL International, may be extremely useful to disseminate in the European area for the stakeholders to know what are the checks to do.
Yes, and actually that's we haven't got an index of the most common errors, but we have been working on some explanations and information about the common errors. If you look at the XBRL.org website, we have a blog post series here, and I'm just trying to find the relevant one. So that one in particular that you mention here is covered by this the blog post number 4. And I think there we go. Somewhere in here we've got a section on exactly that error, which is the incorrect path separators. But I think it would probably make sense to have a link to this from filing.xbrl.org. But if you want to find them, just have a look on our website for this ESEF errors tag, and you'll get a list of all the blog posts that we've posted so far.